What is good, all you cool cats and kittens? This is your commissioner back at you with the surprise. We got the week 7 recap, and it's officially the mid-season mark of the beautiful 2025 season, boys. So, got some picks and thoughts on the season so far. Kicking off with the week 7 recaps, we had some real nice come from behind victories in week 7 on the matchup of the week between Kyle and Ryan. I think Kyle was a huge underdog after the afternoon games before Sunday Night Football. He got 35 plus from CMC, getting 15 over expected. And Monday night games for Ryan being disappointing with Nico Collins leaving in a game in the fourth quarter with a concussion in a game Houston was trailing. So he could have gotten more opportunities. And also seeing Charbonnet vulture 2 short touchdowns away from Kenneth Walker. So Kyle ended up taking the only remaining undefeated team in the league, and this game really made a huge impact to Kyle's own chances of securing one of the top 2 bye seeds as the result, which we'll talk about a bit more in the power rankings and midseason report. The other fun matchup was me versus Travis, with me having Josh Allen and Derrick Henry on a bye, with the only other quarterback on roster being out in Kyler Murray. I was short-standed and scrambled to find some week 7 warm bodies, who was a starting quarterback. And going into the week, I thought I'd still be able to win without making moves, but I don't know what it is about this season, but it certainly feels like whoever faced me seems to score their season high each week. As evidenced by the points against. Through 7 weeks, I lead the league in points against by quite a large margin, especially comparing to other playoff tier teams. 13 more points on average per week compared to the next most damaged through 7 weeks. And this week wasn't any different. Thursday Night Football kicked off with career highs for Matt Stafford getting 5 touchdowns and Devonta Adams getting 3 touchdowns, combining for 24 points over expected. And Chris Olave decided to show up this season. And JT, who I absolutely love, I had to witness him dropping almost 33 points on me for both players, combining for over 25 points over expected. So I scrambled hard to make a trade for a quarterback, but I'm thankful y'all asked ridiculous prices trying to profiteer off of my desperation. So no trades happened, and I got to keep my assets, and my Detroit boys ended up getting me a very much needed W on Monday Night Football. My team has been a mess this season. My chances of top 2 are wiped out, but I'm thinking I can be the most dangerous low C playoff team come playoff time that kicks into gear at the right time this season. So as for the picks going into this week, it's the first time getting perfect picks for me this season. And shout out to Brad and Kyle for also getting perfect picks for week 7. First time for Brad, and second time Kyle's done that this season. As for all of your picks, I was surprised to see all but Ryan picking Kyle to win in the highlight matchup, and everyone except John participated in week 7. So now that it's the midseason, here's the pick'em record so far. We've had 5 weeks of picks from week 1 through week 7, with week 1 and week 6 being blank due to me not sending out the pick'em sheets. But our league leader of pick'ems is also the back-to-back champ in Kyle, getting 80% of his picks correct, which is also shared by Brad. As always, I'm planning on giving away a small prize to the winner of the pick'ems this season. So there's plenty more games left to be picked. So make sure to always make the picks. All right, let's get to the meat of today. We are officially at the halfway mark of the 2025 season. I'll present my mid-season power rankings, and I'll zoom into the 2 playoff-related races that are well underway. We are now shifting away from just playoff seeding likely based odds over to also factoring in for the championship odds for the remaining of the season. I'm seeing the power rankings off of 3 tiers: those racing for the top 2 seed buys, those looking for one of the remaining playoff seeds, and the rest. At 9 and 10, I got Kevin and Eve. These are the 2 teams I don't think have a shot at making the playoffs this season. Now, denoted, I'll talk about some other potential factors in a little bit, but Eve is sitting at 0-7 as the only winless team this season. So far out from what I think is needed in terms of win-loss for the 6th seed. But he's also in his own tier in terms of points for the season as the only team below 700, and not even having crossed 600 yet through 7 weeks. As for Kevin, he's a bit more competitive and he's got the same record as another team I have in the tier above, but I don't see him being able to put up a winning record in the remaining 7 games, which would be the minimum to get a puncher's chance at sneaking in. Kevin also doesn't own his own first this season, so Kevin's probably regretting trading away Jonathan Taylor for Travis's 2027 first pretty badly right now. I think Kevin would be a favorite for a playoff seed right now had he held on to JT, especially with the way that he's been performing. That said, I'll mention this in the mid-season report, but incentives across managers in terms of whether or not they hold their own first for this upcoming draft can throw a wrench into a lot of the current rankings and team strength. So while I don't see Eve moving away from his own tier at 10 for the rest of the season, Kevin is likely a candidate to move either up or down in the next coming weeks. As the middle tier, those in the race for playoff seeding through 7 weeks, I've got 5 teams fighting out for 3 playoff seeds. Starting at 8, got full Jerry sitting at 8. John's got the same record at 2-5 with Kevin, but given the difference in points for, by about 17 points better on average per week through the first 7 weeks, I've got John at 8. At 7, I've got Brandon, who does own his own first, but given the surprising 4-3 record, putting him sole 4th in terms of standings and 2 games ahead of John or Kevin, even with modest points for, I think that's good enough for 8th. That's good for 8th in the league. I'm giving the nod to Bills Mafia at 7 above John. At 6, I've got Wooksy Fingerhold sitting at 6, lowest in points for and tied in standings with the other 2 teams in the remaining in this tier. Brad's likely making the playoffs, but given Brad owns his own first, I could see a 2023 repeat in someone below Brad getting pushed into the playoffs in the second half of the season. At 5 and 4, I got Travis and myself. Travis is rightfully his own tier. As we've seen through the first half of the season, Travis can compete with anyone in any given week. The addition of JT this season has made him really dangerous, and I think he's a lock for the playoffs, and I'm expecting Travis and I being the first round match in the playoffs at 4 and 5. So at 4, that win over Travis this past week for me, while not a must win for playoff chances, certainly helps me mentally. Injury riddled to start the season. I'm definitely out of the race for the top 2 seed, but should be the most dangerous non-bye seed team come playoff time. All right, so at top 3, here's how I have it ranked today. Canada up to number 1 after his victory over Ryan. Mr. Ambassador at 2, Embracer Dynasty at 3. This top 3 can and will flip-flop for the remaining weeks in the regular season. Whoever gets the top 2 seed will increase their chances of getting the ring by about 50%. Because of the Week 15 skip. So this race is going to be tight. And speaking of the top 2 race, here's the midseason look into the playoff race for the season. There are 2 races. Let's dive into the top 2 bye seed race. I think the cutoff will be at 12 and 2. 11 and 3 might be enough on a tiebreaker, but there's 3 teams in it regardless for this race. All 3 teams face a top 4 opponent at least once, with Kyle being the only one remaining. Only one of the 3 facing multiple top tier opponents in the second half. I do think the race for the top 2 will be lost by whoever that loses to a non-top 4 team, whether it's an off week or facing someone on a hot week. So that said, while I don't expect those matchups between these 3 and someone that's out in the bottom 6 to be picked as my matchups of the week, but any week where these 3 face Huge Dicka, Wooksy Fingerhold, or even full Jerry, especially with what we saw Jerry capable of doing this past week, I'll be keeping a close eye out on. A loss to any of those teams by these 3 would likely mean that loss is what causes them to lose out on this highly competitive top 2 seed race. Now, as for the other race, I've entitled here as a battle for the 4, 5, 6 seeds, 3 seeds total, but I do think it's likely going to be a race for just the 6 seed. Projected cutoff to make the playoffs, I think this season as it stands for team strength, will be 7 and 7. I don't think it's difficult to see myself, Trust the Process, or Huge Dicka need to hit the win-loss projections to make up to that 7 and 7 to get there. But I've noted here, I would need to go 4-3. Huge Dicka need to go 4-3. But the most likely teams in terms of what they need to do rest of the season, Wuski, Fingerhold, and Bills Mafia, who have the most realistic chances of hitting the rest of the season records in terms of threshold they would need to hit, they both own their own firsts, and I don't think they believe they're contenders yet. So I can see a lot of movements potentially taking place for each of those teams in terms of trades or just engineer tanking jobs to get a place in the lottery, which means, as outlandish as it may be to see John, who doesn't own his own first and right now would need to go 5-2 rest of the season, which I wouldn't bet on, could be the one getting pushed into the playoffs. Now, connecting back with what I mentioned, Kevin, his own ranking at 9 in the power rankings earlier, he also has the same record as John and is also in the same boat as he doesn't own his own first either. Now, the interesting twist here is Kevin owns John's first, meaning it'd be in Kevin's best interest to be the one getting pushed into the playoffs instead of John, assuming that Trust the Process and Huge Dicka make the playoffs. If that window opens up, and to make sure he locks John out of the playoffs and John's own first goes into the playoffs or into the lottery. So there's a lot of interesting incentives and storylines forming as we enter the second half of the season and we get closer to the Week 12 trade deadline. All right, so that does it for what I was able to fit in for the midseason look into the standings. Let's move over to the Week 8 matchups. There aren't really a lot of juicy matchups here, but I'm picking Huge Dicka versus Full Jerry's matchup as the matchup of the week. It probably won't be a must-win for Huge Dicka, but John is incentivized to win here, and Kevin is facing Brady Stewart Dynasty, which is going to be a hard battle, and I'm not picking him to win there. So the heat between Kevin and John will get massively hotter if John gets ahead of Kevin by even one game because of the points for tiebreaker. So in this matchup, I'm picking Huge Dicka over John for this, along with the rest of the sleeper favorites for a chalk pick selection for Week 8 matchups. But our league has evened out much better with the middle class of teams being able to compete on any given night with the contenders. And like I said earlier in the buy seed race, for our top 3 teams, every week against the bottom 6 of the league is a must win. And we've all seen Brad, who's going up against Moncton Meerkats this week, for example, get hot. So, all right, boys, that does it for the recap of Week 7 and the brief look into the mid-season playoff races. Hope y'all are enjoying the season. Enjoy the games on Thursday, Sunday, and Monday, boys. Peace.